I was saying, your boy Rico from Street Scores coming with a day 17 and 18 Washington football team training camp important notes and quotes. I mean, of course, a lot of things go on throughout the days, but I only talk about the most important and notable ones because a lot of them have depth chart or even just somebody making the team implications, making the 53-man roster. And then, of course, there are just really important things like Ryan Fitzpatrick was good today, Taylor Heinicke was good today, or bad, you know what I'm saying? So we only talk about the important notes, and of course, we have quotes at the end as well, especially from Coach Rivera, because he said a lot of important things these past 2 days. And of course, in the beginning, I have to give my injury update, and when we get to the notes and quotes, we go position by position, starting with quarterback, then offensive line, all the way down to defensive backs. Y'all already know how this works. Plus, I want to give y'all the 5 players that were cut, because again, instead of going from 90 players to 53, now we go from 90 to 85, which was last Tuesday, August 17th, to 80 today, August 24th by 4 p.m. And then next week, exactly 7 days from today, 7-day increments, August 31st by 4 p.m., we have to go down to 53. So far, we just been doing cuts in increments of 5. Now we're about to go from 80 to 53 by next week. Also, this is the last week of training camp that like us as the public will know anything about what's going on. After this week, everything is going to be completely secretive, completely hidden away. We won't get any clips, any information about what's going on in training camp. Of course, we'll already know who the 53 players are, so there's nothing to speculate as far as that goes. But since they'll be preparing for the Chargers, we won't get any information out of training camp. We won't know what plays they're running, with formations, with personnel packages, nothing. So enjoy this last week of constant updates on what's going on in practices, because after this week is over with. But before we get in all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Also, make sure you check out the rest of the channel. All of my videos are organized in playlists. I even have a comedy playlist for all of my funny videos. And then, of course, with that 2 weeks of just no information we're getting from the team at all, maybe some press conferences. If we have some of those, I will break those down as well. But like, that's going to give me plenty of time to work on these film sessions for the rookie class. And also, we got to get these fantasy leagues started up. But without further ado, man, let's get it. Alright, so first of all, we cut 5 players today. Cornerback Jordan Brown, offensive tackle Rick Leonard, linebacker Justin Phillips, and defensive tackle Justice Reed were all released this morning. But then center John Toth was released after practice today. So we released 5 players today, 4 in the morning, and then I guess they wanted to give John Toth just any opportunity, any last second chances to see if he can make this roster over somebody else. Maybe like a Tony Brown who's at the end of the depth chart, who's definitely not making the 53-man roster, but apparently they decided to go with Tony Brown to stay on the roster as the last wide receiver, the 10th wide receiver, over John Toth as the last center. And nothing really important to analyze right there. Those weren't a Steven Sims or a Kelvin Harmon. Those were guys we already knew weren't making the 53-man roster. There was no real contention. Even though Torrey McTyer maybe 3 weeks ago was in this same group of people, but he's just been balling out in practices and in preseason. Now, he's probably behind Benjamin St. Juste as far as outside corners go. Definitely ahead of Danny Johnson and some guys. So you never know. Maybe Tony Brown comes out and looks like Antonio Brown and then he takes somebody else's spot. But I highly doubt it, but he's still here. He has every chance in the world. Then, of course, we got to do the injury updates next. First of all, wide receiver De'Ami Brown and linebacker Khaleke Hudson were not at practice yesterday, but Samus Reyes and Tamarick Hemingway, the 2 tight ends who missed most of last week's practices and missed the preseason game against the Bengals, were finally back out there yesterday. And then, of course, Curtis Samuel and defensive end Casey Toohill were out there yesterday, but were not in pads. Kramer Curl also missed practice yesterday due to an illness, along with De'Ami Brown. That's why he wasn't there yesterday. And they said that Curtis Samuel has increased his conditioning, but they're still not exactly sure when he'll get some full team work. Ron Rivera said that he had a good 2 days, including yesterday and the day before that, and the training staff increased what he did yesterday, and they're just going to keep monitoring him. William Jackson, with his thigh bruise or something like that, is still being held out. Nothing serious, just taking precaution. Kendall Fuller who missed the preseason game against the Bengals, returned to practice yesterday. But with Kendall Fuller out because of a sickness, of course, Bobby McCain and Landon Collins were your starting safeties throughout the day yesterday. But then today, De'Ami Brown and Cameron Curl came back from the illnesses. Khaleke Hudson also came back. And then Curtis Samuel and Casey Toohill were just working on the side. And William Jackson as well, as far as an update, as of today, has been working on the side field with a trainer. Rivera said something to the extent of he's been dealing with a quad injury. And then Samus Reyes and Tamarick Hemingway today were finally a part of full team drills. So Samus Reyes is great to go out of concussion protocol. I'm very happy to hear that. And Tamarick Hemingway, when he was taking some team drills, he was wearing a green no contact jersey, which I've never really heard of before, and Matthew Perez says he's never really seen before either. And then also today, Curtis Samuel didn't do any individual work. Actually, he did some last week before the preseason game, but he's just been on the side field this week so far, today and yesterday. And then before we dive into the updates for each position group, just to let you know, they've been mixing it up these past couple of days in practice. They let Torrey McTyer and Jimmy Moreland run with the ones. Dax Milne has been getting a lot of run with the ones. They've been doing scout team offense versus first team defense and things like that. Ricky Seals-Jones also got reps with the ones as well. So they're just mixing it up, trying to see if anybody can handle anything. Again, like I've said before, if you ball out with the third stringers against third stringers, that doesn't necessarily mean that you could actually still step into a real NFL game and produce like they expect you to. So they got to see what you can do with the ones against the ones. So they got to have the majority of the ones playing and then randomly mix in some other guys as well to really see what they can do. And that's why Dax Milne has been getting a lot of work with the ones to see if he can truly hang and earn one of these last receiving spots on the team, especially since Rivera sees him as a future slot receiver, like a future franchise guy that we could groom into our starter once Adam Humphries is gone. Now moving to the quarterbacks, and neither of them had a great day or their worst, just kind of in the middle. Both Ryan Fitzpatrick, Taylor Heineke had their ups and downs. I mean, literally one play, Ryan Fitzpatrick had a great throw to Logan Thomas, and it wasn't a throw itself. It was the reads, it was the patience to wait for the route to open up and to find them. Logan Thomas was open, easy touchdown. But then literally the next rep in the end zone, he throws it into traffic and Landon Collins intercepts it, and that would have been a pick six in a real game. And then another sequence, he hits Terry McLaurin for a nice gain on a slant, and then the play right after that throws a pick to Cole Holcomb. And Taylor Heineke had a huge dime to J.D. McKissick where he blew by Jamin Davis on a go route. Would have been an easy touchdown. And then also in the same day was picked off by Trey Apke in 2-minute drills. Then the offensive line. Eric Flowers still with the starters. Eric Flowers has been with the starters for about like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks now. And Pro Football Focus has graded Wes Schweitzer with a 71 grade through the first 2 weeks of preseason. Eric Flowers has a 64.9. But Ron Rivera said, as far as Eric Flowers goes, quote, he's a very big man. He's a big physical presence. He's a lot to get by. He's very athletic, moves very well, has good arm length. So maybe Ron Rivera is just banking on Eric Flowers' potential and athleticism and strength and length, things you just can't teach, whereas Wes Schweitzer may be the better blocker right now. Maybe they want to give Eric Flowers as much time as possible to see if he can keep that running with the ones job right now, because he has more potential. He has a higher ceiling. If he can end up figuring out all of the technical things and getting as refined as a Wes Schweitzer, he would easily be a better blocker than Wes Schweitzer. But Wes Schweitzer is more technically refined, a little bit ahead mentally, has better chemistry with the guys around him, especially since he was here last year, whereas Eric Flowers was here 2 years ago and just came back this offseason. All I know is the offensive line does have to block better. Throughout the day against the Bengals, it wasn't bad. It was actually pretty good, especially for certain runs, certain drives. But there were times where they allowed pressure on max protect, where only 2 receivers were running routes against the Bengals. So that's unacceptable. They block better against the Patriots, who have a better defense and more specifically a better defensive line. So I don't know what that was. Everybody was just a little bit off, and especially Ryan Fitzpatrick. Also, just to let you know, out of the highest graded preseason rookie offensive linemen, not just tackles, all rookie offensive linemen, Samuel Cosmi is third with an 81.8. Only behind Dan Moore of the Steelers and Royce Newman of the Packers. And then as far as tight ends go, nothing very notable other than the fact that Samus Reyes ended practice today with 2 drops in the final 5 plays. So he had 2 targets in 5 plays and dropped both of them. That's not good to hear. Maybe he's just slowly trying to work his way back in the rhythm since he had a week off due to concussion. Maybe he's just trying to get his groove back. we'll see how much he plays and how much noise he makes in this next preseason game against the Ravens, because that's huge to me. I'm really intrigued by the Sammis Reyes project, and I really want him to make this 53-man roster. And I want him to earn it, because even if he's not ready to make the 53-man roster, maybe he makes it because they know you're less likely to lose Ricky Seals-Jones or Tamarick Hemingway in waivers by another team snatching them up than Sammis Reyes. We saw several teams wanted to potentially sign Sammis Reyes. He had a whole bunch of meetings lined up. We just happened to get him first. So it may just be strategy to where even if Sammis Reyes isn't good enough to actually be on the 53-man roster, maybe you put him there because he's more likely to get taken off of waivers than a Tamarick Hemingway or Ricky Seals-Jones. You may just be able to put them on the practice squad and they just chill out. Nobody touches them. And now the running backs. Like I said earlier, J.D. McKissic killed Jamin Davis in coverage on one play for a long touchdown deep down the field on a go route. And Ron Rivera was hyped too. He yelled out hell yeah for the offense, so he loved it. Peyton Barber also had a moment in yesterday's practice where he had two really good back-to-back plays. On one of them, he followed his blockers and cut up field through a crease in the defense, and then the next play, he completed a pass near the sideline. And Randy Jordan loved it. Credit to Zach Selby for that information right there. Also, if you didn't know, Jared Patterson in the preseason amongst running backs, like all of them, not just rookies, just every running back that's running the preseason, he has 9 rushing first downs, which is first. He has 55 receiving yards, which is first. And he has 111 rushing yards, which is third. He's just missing that breakaway run where, you know, it's like a 60 to 80 yard run for a touchdown, which some guys have had. That's why he's third in yards. And then nothing really notable from the receivers. Terry McLaurin doing Terry McLaurin things, you know, that's just how it's going to go. Again, these are just the most important notables and quotables. Things we already know. Is no reason for me to regurgitate that information to y'all. So moving to the defense. Defensive line. These past 2 days, you kind of expect it, but like they were really on it these past 2 days. And like Ron Rivera even had to talk to Jonathan Allen because they kept bumping into Ryan Fitzpatrick and touching him. They're not necessarily supposed to do that. They weren't tackling them and hitting them hard, but they still just don't want them touching them. And I guess their momentum was just taking them into Ryan Fitzpatrick. So Ron Rivera just prefers for them to have a worse rep and not potentially hurt Ryan Fitzpatrick than for them to go all out against an offensive lineman and then accidentally run into Ryan Fitzpatrick. Also, Daniel Wise was one of the guys that was noted for standing out in the second half of that preseason game against the Bengals. And they love the fact that he can play both defensive end and defensive tackle. He had pressures from both positions. And he's made a lot of progress. We just got to monitor to see whether he'll actually make the 53-man roster or not, because he's at least making the practice squad. And then if he's on the practice squad, another team may take him, honestly. And something really noteworthy that Rhiannon Walker pointed out, these last couple of practices, today and yesterday, Washington has used Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, Matt Ioannidis, Montez Sweat, and Chase Young all out there together, like more than usual. And that's something I've been telling y'all to watch out for, because in that Bucs game, that was the first game all season. He waited till the playoffs to start doing it, but he started using 5 defensive linemen a lot. Granted, Matt Ioannidis was hurt, so we did it with Tim Settle, but he was running 5 defensive linemen quite a bit in that Bucs game for the first time all season. So I was like, maybe he's just trying stuff right now. Maybe this is foreshadowing for what he may try to do in the future, and they're starting to do that in training camp right now as we're starting to get closer to not just trying to figure out who's going to make the team, but also we're trying to figure out what we're actually going to do in real games, more specifically to the Chargers. They're starting to actually game plan and figure out personnel groupings, formations, all of that type of stuff, and preparing for regular season games now. These are not just training camp battle versus battle, making everybody better type of stuff. This is them trying to figure out what is going to work and what is not going to work as a team. Now moving on to the linebackers, Cole Holcomb has been having a really good couple of weeks of practice, especially these last 2 days. Like I mentioned earlier, he had that interception off of Fitzpatrick in the 2-minute drill. He jumped an underneath route, so that wasn't even like a gimme interception. He went and made that play. I love that. And Ron Rivera also addressed Cole Holcomb in the media back on August 18th, and he said that he sees a lot more consistent play out of Cole Holcomb. Says he has a better feel for the run plays and has raised his game to another level. And with all of these interceptions and pass breakups he's been getting in training camp, he's also been improving in coverage as well. And he took a big step forward in coverage last year, because last year was the first time that he was even respectable in coverage. And the fact that he's getting even better than that now means a lot for us, because our linebacker group is probably potentially still our weakest group on our entire roster right now. Potentially. I mean, Jamin Davis, Cole Holcomb, Khalid Hudson have a lot of potential, but who knows what they're actually going to look like when we get out there in regular season games. And then Jamin Davis. one of the biggest question marks on the team right now. Like I said, he got beat bad by a J.D. McKissic go route where Ron Rivera was super excited about the touchdown and yelling. And it's also noteworthy that, the past week and a half, 2 weeks, Jamin Davis has primarily been running with the twos, the second stringers, when they get the sub packages. So when they run nickel, dime, or whatever, and they only have two linebackers out there, it's not Jamin Davis, it's John Bostic and Cole Holcomb. I don't like hearing that, but hey, man, that's just what it is right now. Jamin Davis has a few more weeks to get it together. We'll see. But at the same time, Jamin Davis has been having some good plays. I mean, even on one play, he blew up Cam Sims when Cam Sims was running a route to the sideline, and Cam Sims was a little slow to get up, but he's good. Plus, the first team was pretty much done after that play anyway, so he was able to just rest anyway, so he was good. But Matthew Perez made a good point at pointing out that Jamin Davis, one of his main problems is getting used to reading plays with quarterbacks under center. He's been mostly reacting to shotgun formations in college and knowing exactly what's going to happen before it happens. Now he has to learn to read what an offense is doing, what a quarterback is thinking, what play may potentially be called by the offense with the quarterback under center now, and that's a completely different side of football. He has to make completely different reads, so that is one of the main reasons why he's struggling. But at the same time, he's making a lot of progress. I mean, I saw it going from that Patriots game to the Bengals game, but Pro Football Focus also saw it as well. He had a 31.5 grade against New England. He had a 75.3 grade against Cincinnati. He definitely improved. And he was also the highest graded rookie defender out of all rookie defenders that played on Friday night. So again, he's making a lot of progress. He's still not there, but that jump from the Patriots game to that Bengals game should have us highly encouraged. That should have us very optimistic about his future. He still may not be ready to be the starting Mike linebacker week 1, but that type of improvement shows that he can eventually be it at least some point this season. And he could eventually become what Ron Rivera feels like he can be for this defense, and that's our Luke Kuechly, but just more athletic, because Jamin Davis is more athletic. He just has to get all of the mental stuff down. And then the defensive backs, again, like I said, with Cam Curl not there yesterday, Bobby McCain and Landon Collins started with the ones, but then Landon Collins returned today, got right back to what his usual self was doing, making plays. Also, speaking of Landon Collins, so far through these first 2 preseason games, Landon Collins has the highest grade amongst all of our safeties. That's including Cameron Curl, Bobby McCain, everybody. Jeremy Reeves, he has a 79.4 grade. Like a lot of reporters have been saying so far in training camp, this is the best Landon Collins has ever looked since he's put on a burgundy and gold uniform. You saw that play where he blew up Thaddeus Moss, and it's not even just the tackle, it was the speed in which he got there to make that play. Like, he's reading plays faster, he's thinking less, doing more, and he's just moving faster. He just literally looks like a faster player. Like, he could just run a faster 40 time this year than he ever did since we signed him. Again, reporters have been saying that this is the most he's ever looked like his Giants all-pro self since we've signed him. This offseason is literally the best form of Landon Collins we've gotten so far. So I'm excited because we're seeing some of that in preseason. I mean, there was some plays with Jamar Chase, if he would have caught the ball, and if it weren't preseason, Landon Collins would have laid him out, and he would have dropped the ball anyway, incompletion, fumble, whatever. Also, speaking of Jeremy Reeves, Ron Rivera has a big quote. You can go look it up, basically detailing how much he likes Jeremy Reeves as a guy, especially mentally. Like, he used the word grit specifically, and it's basically a story breaking down how he was here last year, had a great training camp, and we remember that. Last year he did have a really good training camp, but it wasn't enough to make the team. But Ron Rivera basically told him, hey, just keep doing what you're doing. There's going to be a situation that arises where we can bring you back to the 53-man roster. Make sure you're ready to take advantage of that. And so we did eventually at some point last season, and Pro Football Focus loved Jeremy Reeves. They felt like he was one of our best safeties out of the entire season, grade-wise. And now look at him, potentially going to make this 53-man roster this year, leaving training camp without having to be brought back off of the practice squad mid-season. So Ron Rivera stuck to his word. I mean, that's like a similar situation with Taylor Heineke, where Scott Turner was like, hey, man, our quarterback situation is a little weird. It's a little funky. If you can just keep it together and be patient, we'll bring you in. And it ended up happening way later, but Taylor Heineke ended up finally getting his first start in the playoffs against the Buccaneers, and the rest is history. And then Troy Apke, I mean, he's honestly looks better. I mean, even that play he got beat pretty bad in the Bengals game, technically it was pretty good coverage. He just never got his head turned around, but he was there. And then he actually had some positive plays in that preseason game. And then even yesterday, Trey Apke had 2 picks and a pass breakup just yesterday alone in practice. You gotta remember, Trey Apke literally is one of the most athletic cornerbacks in NFL history according to his testing with his 40 time, 3 cones and all of that type of stuff. So it's all mental, and it seems like his switch from safety to cornerback is a huge improvement. He still may not be better than a Torrey McTyer or Benjamin St-Juste, Kendall Fuller, or William Jackson, but he's way better at corner than he ever was at safety. By far, it's not even close. And also, like I keep saying, don't be surprised if Trey Apke makes his team, because not only is he contributing and looking like a at least decent backup cornerback that you can bring in sub packages just for his speed, but most importantly, he's a strong special teams contributor. He's a special teams ace. He's a star in special teams coverage. And Nate Kaxer, along with all special teams coaches in the NFL, have the choice to keep a handful of guys that they pick specifically to make this roster. That's why Jared Norris, David Mayo, Cam Sims, Derek Forrest, Trey Apke, all of these guys are quite likely to make the team because they're great special teams contributors, especially on special teams coverage. And then speaking of Torrey McTyer, Kendall Fuller spoke about him. He said he's a very talented player. He's a guy that competes. He can do a lot of different things, and he's been making a lot of plays on the ball. I agree. Now, on one side of this quote, Kendall Fuller was asked about Torrey McTyer. It's not like he just randomly in his press conference talked about Torrey McTyer out of nowhere. So, I mean, what do you expect him to say? Just Torrey McTyer sucks or something like that? So, of course, he was going to give a positive review. But at the same time, I agree. Torrey McTyer definitely looks like he should be directly behind Benjamin St-Juste on the depth chart. He's been making plays ever since that Friday night practice where fans could attend at FedEx Field. I mean, that was a huge day for him. He made a bunch of plays there, and he's just continued that momentum, making play after play in practice, making plays in the preseason. He probably had literally the best defensive play other than Chase Young in that Patriots game. And then we saw him start with the ones along with Benjamin St-Juste against the Bengals, against Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, and he looked really good out there. Even if a receiver completed a pass, he was right there to make sure it went for no gain or minimal gain. I mean, he looks like a very solid backup. I mean, he looks better as our 4th outside cornerback on our depth chart than a lot of teams have as their 3rd or 2nd. I mean, just being completely honest, we have crazy depth at corner. And then speaking of Kendall Fuller, with his press conference, he not only talked about Torrey McTyer, but he talked about Landon Collins as well. And he basically said it was funny with the situation between him and Landon Collins, because last year it was Landon Collins telling him to sit down and get healthy and get right and be patient. And this time around, this offseason, it was Kendall Fuller returning the favor to Landon Collins. And he also said that him and Landon Collins practiced very close to each other in Florida. So, like, he knew that Landon Collins was going to come back sooner than everybody else expected because he saw him all offseason working out and things like that. And then lastly, Benjamin St-Juste, nothing notable about what he's doing on the field because, I mean, he's getting better and better. Remember all of that hype that he had coming out of mandatory minicamp? He's literally way better than that guy already. Like, he's ready to start an outside corner if we want him to. He's been running outside corner with the ones, with Kendall Fuller being primarily in the slot for most of the reps when the starters are out there. So I'm not sure if that means Benjamin St-Juste will start at outside corner week 1 against the Chargers, but I definitely know he will play a lot out there, and it will be more so at outside corner than slot corner. They love him on the outside. We saw him, again, like I said, working with the ones with Torrey McTyer against the Bengals. But this is not about what he's doing talent-wise and what he's doing on the field as far as his side of the football, but I like the fact that he's been coaching up Dax Milne and Antonio Gandy-Golden. Like, after practice was over, Benjamin St-Juste was getting some work in with Dax Milne and Antonio Gandy-Golden and was talking to both of them as he ran with them and was basically showing them like, okay, I'm doing this to you because you're doing this, so you should do this to be able to get open and things like that. So the fact that Benjamin St-Juste is already stepping up as like a veteran coach on the field, like an on-the-field coach type of thing, and helping out the other receivers shows how far ahead he is in his development, because he's not even worried about what he has to do anymore. He's already fully confident and sure of himself. He knows he has what it takes to, I mean, he can hang with Terry McLaurin. He can go from covering top 10 receiver Terry McLaurin to covering tallest receiver on the team Cam Sims to covering quick, one of the most agile receivers in the NFL, Adam Humphries, the next play, and he can lock all of them up. He's literally done that in a practice. So we don't have to worry about Benjamin St-Juste anymore. Any news you hear from him is going to be something specific like that, with him helping out Dax Milne and Antonio Gandy-Golden. He is now in that company with like the Chase Youngs, the Montez Sweats, the Terry McLaurins, where when I do these videos on important notes and quotes, it's not really necessary to mention Benjamin St-Juste, because when he's making great plays, you expect it out of him. Now, special teams, the only real notable thing from the past 2 days was that DeAndre Carter, Dax Milne, and Isaiah Wright were the ones catching kicks during special teams drills. So no Jared Patterson, a little confusing to me. I want to see if he can build off of that momentum he gave us with that 36-yard return against the Bengals. So I'm surprised that he wasn't fielding kicks in practice the past 2 days, but we'll see. And then now to the important quotes. First up, you have Ron Rivera. He said in his press conference yesterday that one of the things that the team did consciously improve on was the team speed. And you can definitely see that. I mean, we have speed everywhere. The guys we brought in, Curtis Samuel, even Torrey McTyer, I think he runs like a 4.41 40 time, and William Jackson runs a 4.3 something. Curtis Samuel runs a 4.3 something. It's speed everywhere. Jamin Davis, the most athletic linebacker in this draft class, according to his RAS score, and one of the most athletic linebackers ever drafted into the NFL. They went straight athleticism and speed. I mean, you saw it with Derek Forrest. I mean, even technically Samuel Cosmi. You saw it with De'Ami Brown, the best deep threat in college football the past 2 seasons. This team literally went speed, and it's showing. Also, Ron Rivera said that the team played zone defense way too much last year, and that it's also something that Jack Del Rio was pointing out all throughout the offseason, and so they finally went out to get players to help them finally run man coverage. Torrey McTyer, Benjamin St-Juste, William Jackson. And Rivera even expounded upon it, saying like the last thing he wants is for teams to know what they're doing, to know it's coming. I mean, you want to run zone, you want to run some man, but you don't want to run one the majority of the time into where defenses already know what you're going to do pre-snap. Plus, like I've explained before, like Mark Bullock broke down, that having corners that can run man and just completely erase receivers from a play helps us in so many ways, specifically because that allows you to use more linebackers and safeties to blitz if you want to overload one side, say specifically Chase Young's side. So now even if the offense overloads the offensive line to Chase Young's side, if you overload the defense on that side, Chase Young will still be able to get one-on-one block situations and to be able to dominate and run up the numbers this year. So having man cover corners is a great domino effect for a lot of things to go right. Chase Young being able to be in more one-on-one block situations, us being able to blitz more players, us being able to have more guys in zone coverage like linebackers and safeties, while the 2 outside corners are just shutting down 2 receivers. And now you have more defensive players that can cover and worry about the remaining offensive players that are eligible receivers on any given play. It's just, I mean, having corners that can literally just man up and take a receiver out of a play helps in so many different ways. I mean, that's a whole 30-minute video in itself with a film session and all of that. But Rivera just spoke about it briefly and also mentioned that Jack Del Rio agreed with him mightily. Also, Ron Rivera said, quote, "We're looking at the backup depth at defensive line. Those guys have to step up," unquote. And I'm surprised to hear that quote because I thought Daniel Wise looked really good in that Bengals preseason game along with William Bradley King, Shaka Toney. Everybody looked pretty good, but I guess he expects more out of them. Also, Ron Rivera said that Jared Patterson, Torrey McTyer, Isaiah Wright, and Dax Milne are among the players who have flashed so far in camp and preseason. I talked about that in my receiver breakdown video, my most recent video before this one, but I just wanted to make sure I repeated that because this is the section of Ron Rivera's most notable quotables from the past couple of days, and that's a big one. The fact that he isolated Jared Patterson, Torrey McTyer, Isaiah Wright, and Dax Milne as some guys that have really stepped up so far this offseason, especially training camp and preseason, that's huge. That's great company to be in, especially for Isaiah Wright, because we know Jared Patterson has been balling. We know Torrey McTyer has been balling. Dax Milne has been having moments. So the fact that Isaiah Wright is mentioned in the company of those guys is definitely a big compliment towards Isaiah Wright. Still may not be enough for him to make the 53-man roster, but that's great to hear. It sounds like he'll at least make the practice squad if he doesn't make the 53-man roster because he's getting noticed by the head honcho himself. Also, Ron Rivera said that he wants to see the team go through the process of a regular week during this dress rehearsal. So, I mean, I guess it sounds like this next preseason game against the Ravens will be somewhat of a dress rehearsal. I thought last week would have been, and then this third preseason game would have technically have been what a usual fourth preseason game is, where like the backups of the backups have the most chances to see who should really make this 53-man roster, or to just go out there and put out good tape to audition for other teams that may want them. But it sounds like if we're going through this week as if it's like a regular week, and as far as like dress rehearsal and game planning and things like that, maybe our starters will play a lot. So that's great to hear. But he also said that like the main reason he wants to do this is because he wants players to get a feel for how to get the most out of their own time. So he wants guys practicing, mentally preparing, watching film as if this next game coming up is a game that matters in the win or loss column. Also, Ron Rivera spoke about how he feels about guys that they drafted and their chances of making the team. And this came up because of Keith Ishmael, the center guard that they drafted in 2020 in the 5th round. It seems like he may not make the team. It definitely seems like Tyler Larson is above him on the depth chart, but we just drafted him in 2020. But Rivera addressed that. He said, quote, "The only time it's ever important is the first year after that you start looking at the guys that are going to help you right now. You really don't want to cut a guy that you drafted right away, but you want to also play the guys that give you the best opportunity to win," unquote. So if you were just drafted by this team, so like this draft class, Derek Forrest, Dax Milne, that definitely holds some weight. Even if you're getting outperformed in practice preseason by another guy, the fact that they just drafted you and they still think highly of you still gives you a better chance of making this roster than, say, like a Keith Ishmael who they drafted in the 2020 draft, where it's already been a little over a full year, and now they're less concerned about your draft positioning and the fact that they drafted you, and now they just want the best player on the team. So that's interesting to know that, I mean, if you were drafted in 2021, you're far safer than a guy drafted in 2020 or behind that. I mean, especially since Ron Rivera just got here in 2020. Anybody drafted 2019 or before, I mean, you literally better be better than the other guys in your position group, because there's nothing keeping you to this team other than your production. Also, Logan Thomas had a good quote talking about how like they can move the ball whenever they want to the first 80 yards, but once they get to the red zone, they got to learn how to convert those 4th and 1s and how to get those touchdowns in the red zone and not just field goals. And he has a pretty long quote, so I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I like the fact that he's aware. The fact that Logan Thomas is aware of what's going on in these goal line situations, these red zone situations, shows that the team itself is aware. Ryan Fitzpatrick is aware. Scott Turner is aware. The offensive line, Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, everybody is aware that they have to get better in the red zone. Ryan Fitzpatrick has said that he's not bothered by the fact that the first team offense has yet to score a touchdown in the preseason, but it goes to show by this extensive Logan Thomas quote that they are fully aware that they need to be way better in the red zone. And then the last quote, Joe Judge said that he plans to treat this preseason finale against the Patriots next Sunday as almost like a regular season game, and that the starters will play about a half. And I'm hoping we do the same. That's the only reason I included that quote. Joe Judge, head coach of the Giants, plans on letting his starters play for about a half. I hope we do the same, because the way we looked against the Bengals, they needed to go back out there. I don't care if this week wasn't dress rehearsal. Even if you don't play the starting defense, the starting offense needs to go out there against the Ravens. And then lastly, Niki Javala tweeted out all of the amount of snaps and snap percentages that every player that played in the Bengals game got. And you can see that on the screen. I'm not going to talk about it too long, so if you really want to analyze it, you can just pause the video and just take a look at it. Really, the notable things is that Sadiq Charles has led the Washington football team in snaps in both games. He had 42 versus New England and 53 versus Cincinnati. Troy Apke played the most defensive snaps with 30 against the Bengals. J.D. McKissick has only played 13 snaps in the preseason, but that just goes to show that they're confident in what he can do, and they feel like Antonio Gibson needs a lot more snaps because he just needs to get back to his last year form before the injury. And also, he's still learning how to be a better running back. Like I've said, Jared Patterson is not a better overall running back than Antonio Gibson, because Antonio Gibson is a freak of nature, the next Christian McCaffrey, but he's definitely a better pure runner as far as vision, patience, cutting, and all of that type of stuff. So Antonio Gibson still needs time and reps to improve on his vision and all of the mental parts of being the running back, the nuances, and also to work on his pass protection as well. And then at the same time, J.D. McKissick isn't expected to get as many snaps as an Antonio Gibson in any regular season game anyway. And then also something noteworthy is that the Washington football team's offensive starters played 23 snaps against the Bengals, which was up from around 14 against New England. So they got increased work going from the Bengals to the Patriots. I hope they get an even more increase in work going from the Bengals to the Ravens. Also notable that Jared Patterson got the most snaps by far by any running back in that Bengals game. I mean, he was in 48% of them. That is crazy. Against Sadiq Charles was in 73% of the snaps, playing both right, left tackle, guard, everything. Sadly, Jamin Davis was all the way down near the bottom with only 17 snaps, only 30%. I want him to get as much as possible. I don't know why we're holding him back. And as far as special team snap counts go, Jared Norris and John Bates were tied with the most with 14, 58%. David Mayo had 13, 54%. Troy Apke had 12, 50%. And DeShazer Everett had 11 with 46%. And Danny Johnson had 10, 42%. Those are your top special team snap counts. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please like this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Of course, please subscribe if you haven't. And as always, man, I appreciate all of the support, man. Big shouts out to everybody that supports the channel. Big shouts out to everybody that donates to the channel. Really appreciate y'all big time. And a special shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now. Man, I really appreciate y'all. I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.